You've just got 4 weeks left to go in your SuperCoach season for 2025. And how has it gone for you? Don't want to talk about it? Looking good? Regardless, here at the Coaches Panel, I got 10 trade targets for you. With those final few or the very last trade you've got, I want to make sure you get the very best options available to you to help you get the best possible outcome for your SuperCoach year for 2025. And if you already know your trade plans for the year, why don't you comment below and let me know the moves you plan to make. But not my number one trade target this week shouldn't come as any surprise to any of you. And it is low-hanging fruit, but honestly, if you don't have this man, it is starting to burn deep. My number one trade target for you this week is Marcus Bontempelli. Over the last 3 weeks, it is just him and Matt Rao. They're the only two guys that are averaging over 150 over the last couple of weeks. And his lowest over the last 4 is 126. That is ridiculous when you throw in the fact that 96% of the top 1% of ranked coaches have their hands on the Bont. It's just plain and simple. If you want to win SuperCoach this year, you want to get it done in your leagues, you're either jumping on Bont or you are way against the pack. I'm all for some separation, but I don't know if this is the guy I want to separate against. Now, this week, he does have the Giants. And over the last 5 weeks, they are the toughest matchup for inside mids. So granted. But he does have a pretty decent history on them. I don't feel like there's anyone that's a great, perfect lineup for him. He's got a 128 and a 118 in his last 2 against them. So I don't mind that. The week after that, he's got the D's. His last score against them was a 182. They're the number 5 best matchup over the last 5 rounds in SuperCoach. And then to wrap up the final 2 weeks of the year, well, he's got the Eagles. The easiest team in SuperCoach to score against, and the percentage they get in that game could be critical for helping them win. And then to wrap up the year, it's Freo. You've got to go all the way back to 2019 for the last time he didn't reach a triple-digit score on them, and he's got an average of 138 in his last 5 outings against the Dockers. So it's a pretty decent run. Tough one this week, granted. But the last time he had a really tough matchup was against the Crows a few weeks ago, and that resulted in a 150-plus score. There's not too many players in SuperCoach I feel happy to go against if they've got the surname Bontempelli. This is just not the guy you want to go up against. It's my number one trade-in target. He's not cheap, but my gosh, he's not cheap for a reason. He is absolutely dominating. Speaking of dominating, keeping the low-hanging fruit running, let's be honest, my first 3 are pretty low-hanging fruit, but I think they're just in such rich vein scoring right now, it's hard to go against them. Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera. Who would have thought he was just a few hours before that game against Melbourne was about to be ruled out due to some soreness and some injury? Unbelievable. He's coming off the back of a 149 and a 162. And scarily, still 1 in 3 coaches in the top 1% don't have their hands on him. So for the guy that is absolutely tearing it up right now, he's firing. And he's evolved his role over the last couple of weeks, much higher centre bounce and inside midfield role over the last month than we had seen over the previous few months. And coming up against North Melbourne this week is perfect for that role because they're the number 2 best matchup for inside mids over the last 5 rounds. So this run could keep there. And I know North might hope to be able to put a run with role on him, like a Will Phillips type. Just the reality is you can't stop this guy. And I don't think North have the cattle that could do that anyway. Straight off the back of that, they've got the Tigers. His last 3 games against them are tons. And the Tigers didn't tag Nick Daicos on the weekend just gone. He got a 177. You could argue Naz is in as just a damaging vein of form and a damaging style of player. That if they're not going to shut down Daicos, I don't know if they're going to be able to do the same to Naz. It could get nasty. Then after that, they've got Essendon, the number 3 best matchup for inside mids over the last 5 weeks. It is getting scary. And then the final round of the year, if you get to that and you don't have him, like that might be your saving grace because the next 3 weeks are just unbelievably painful and scary for the 31% of coaches that have him overall is great, but the 33% in the top 1% that don't, nervous for you. That is for sure. The Giants, look, they are the toughest team to score against for inside mids over the last 5 weeks. But what we might see happen is if it's not getting it done through there, you might drift into the halfback spot again. We know Naz has got that license from Ross Lyon to just roam and to move around. And if he does drift back, any chance of the hope of an easy matchup for coaches coming might just be gone. Yes, a Bedford tag could come his way, certainly at the midfield. But if he drifts back to that halfback spot, in the last 5 weeks, the best spot, if you're a playmaker off halfback, who do you want to play against? The Giants. So there is a world that there could be 4 out of 4 outstanding matchups for Naz. Yes, there's some positional movements that would have to result in it, but my goodness me, that's the defender I don't want to go against. My number 3 trade target is the most expensive player in SuperCoach by 60K. Many of you might not even have the chance to consider this from a salary cap perspective. But my goodness me, Brodie Grundy, my number 3 trade target, has been on an absolute tear. In his last 5 games, he's going at an average of 150. And only a third of coaches in the top 1% have him. So he's unique in that upper echelons right now. Not cheap, but unique. So maybe you're paying for that. He's coming up against Essendon this week. They're the number 3 best matchup for rucks over the last 5 weeks. And in fact, this was the team that he played against 11 rounds ago that actually started this ton run that he's on. He scored a 121 in that matchup. And speaking of that ton run, he's only had 1 score under 120. It's absolutely wild. After this Essendon matchup, it does get a bit neutral. The Brisbane and Geelong matchups, both are on the more neutral side of things. But then after that, he's coming up against the Eagles. In the last 5, they're top 5 easiest for rucks. And in the last 10, they are the easiest. So he could end the year with an absolute bang if Sydney continue to try to bring some form of the end of this year into 2026. These are the 3 guys right now, Bont, Naz, and Grundy. Almost anybody else I'd feel happy to go against. But these are the 3 guys across 3 different lines that, while not presenting financial value, are the 3 guys that could take your SuperCoach season away from you. Let's try to find a little bit more value for you then at a lower price point. My number 4 trade target is Lachie Whitfield. Only about half of the coaches in the top 1% have him, a little bit lower across different parts of the format, but he's got the Dogs this week, which the last 5 games he's played against them have all been tons, and it's a pretty favourable matchup for halfbacks. Then he rolls into North Melbourne. He got a 118 the last time he played them. The Suns, well, there's that injury-impacted game from early in the year, but before that, 2 of his prior 3 games were 130 plus, and then he wraps up the year against the Saints. They're the second best matchup in the last 5 games for halfback transition scoring players, which Lachie isn't. Again, the Saints season is already cooked, but will certainly be cooked by then. And for the Giants, this could have top 4 or home final implications for them. They are absolutely going for it. It's a really nice run of fixture. And the next 2 weeks especially, I like what it could be. Dogs don't really tag, especially on the forward line. North, I don't think they've got the cattle that can do that. And if it's going anywhere, it's going to Callaghan through that midfield with, maybe a Phillips could do that again. 2 matchups for Phillips, getting a reference in this video. And then the Suns, my gosh, he's got some great fixtures historically against them. I like Lachie Whitfield. He's great value for his price point and relatively unique for a guy that's got the scoring history that he does. And then wrapping up my top 5 trade targets is a guy that's gone at 129 in his last 3 and an average of 125 for the season proper, Max Gawn. He was exceptional on the weekend just gone, couldn't get his team over the line against the Saints. But these next couple of weeks, this could get messy. We've seen at least a couple of big monster scores this year, and one of them, before we got our first 200 a few weeks ago, was this from Max Gawn, because he's got the Eagles, a 198 the last time he played them. Oh, man, this could get messy. If Melbourne want to send at least some kind of redeeming signal this weekend, it could get nasty for Flynn. They're the fourth easiest matchup over the last 5, one of the easiest over the last 10 rounds. It could be crazy. Then he's got the Dogs. His lowest score on them in his last 3 outings is 130. Then he's got the Hawks. He got a 142 on them earlier this year, and they're the second best matchup for rucks in the last 5 rounds. And then he's got the Pies to wrap up the year, and his last score against them was a 131. The addition of a flex, while you might not be looking in the ruck line, you might have a Grundy and an English. You might have a Grundy and a Marshall. You might not be looking for another ruck through there. The reality is with flex, you want to be able to get those ceiling scoring players into your team. And my goodness me, as early as this week, you could get the number 1 scoring player for round 21. It could get nasty. So there's my top 5 trade targets. It's Bont, it's Naz, it's Grundy, it's Whitfield and Gawn. Not a heap of high-hanging fruit. It's all low-hanging fruit. But these are the guys that either have unbelievable fixtures over the last couple of weeks and have it continuing, and I don't want to go against despite their price point. And then you've got 2 that just fixture-wise over the next couple of weeks and at their price point. I just can't ignore them. Let's head on a little bit further. Don't worry, I've got some uniques to pop on the way. But how do you not put Nick Daicos into this list? He's my number 6 trade target. He's the most popular player in the top 1%, and he's coming off a 177. It's, my goodness me. In his last 3, he's popping monster scores. He's going over a 144 average. In his last 5, he's going 138. And only Matt Rao for mids in the last 5 has got a better average than him. So he is in as good a form as any player in SuperCoach right now. My gosh. If this is the one you don't have and you're in the top 1%, I'm all for separation. But much like Bont, there are players you want to go against and players that you are running a gauntlet. And going against Nick Daicos, especially with some easier matchups through here. They're not all easy the next month, but there are some matchups through here that I would be petrified to come up against. One of those is this very weekend. He's coming against the Brisbane Lions, who I know historically you might just think, well, MJ, that's a tough matchup there. Good midfield, well-balanced. And those things are true, but his lowest score on them in the last 3 is 112. And the last time he played him, he went at 172. In the last 5 rounds, the Lions are actually one of the easier inside midfield teams to line up against. And then he rolls into the Hawks. His last 3 times he's played them, all triple-digit scores. Okay, then the Crows, a little bit tougher. Certainly over the last 10 rounds, they're one of the tougher teams to score against. 3rd hardest, I think, over the last 10 and really not favourable. He's gone a 105 and a 95 in his last 2 games against them. It's a while ago since Daicos beat up on the Crows, and fully expect to see guys like a Peatling play a negating role as best they can. That's probably the one matchup I don't love for Nick Daicos, but he's also that skilled, that high IQ football player. And the way Collingwood's ball movement is so built around one of the 2 Daicos boys, I can still see that being a really decent score from him. And like I said, I don't want to be that 1% of coach in the top echelons that doesn't have him, and hoping that this one game saves me. With 4 weeks left to go in SuperCoach, one singular score when the other matchups are pretty favourable for him, or at least neutral to favourable. Yeah, I don't want to bank on just one challenging matchup. And then of the 4, he's got the Ds. He does have a 95 on them earlier this year, but just 12 months ago, he also played them in round 24, and he dished up a 186 on them. Yeah, I know it's a lot's changed in 12 months, but Melbourne's year is cooked. They're done. For the Pies, it could be the thing that determines whether or not they're 1 or 2, let alone getting a home final for a qualifying final. So they might still have a lot to play for at that point in time. Yeah, I don't want to get against Nick Daicos. He's my number 6. Let's start opening up some options for you that might sit a little more unique. Rowan Marshall is my number 7 trade target. More unique across the overarching components of SuperCoach, but still only 1 in 4 in the top 1% have him. So again, if you're in the upper echelons and you want something that is going to create separation, this could be handy. Normally, I'd look at a North Melbourne matchup who are his opponents this week and go avoid, but no Tristan Cherry for 1 more week. So he's up against a Bryn Teakle, who didn't really get scored well against with Stanley and Blixarves, but politely, they're not really the upper end rucks we should be thinking about. But as a reference point, because Cats are meh, in rucks, not in anything else. Brodie Grundy played him 2 weeks ago. I know Grundy and Marshall's form lines aren't the same, but Grundy went 153 on him. That could be awesome. Now that he's back in that solo ruck spot, the experiment with he and Max Heath ruck sharing, and now that they got the win last week, I can't imagine too many changes. Then from there, it actually really opens up for ruck matchups for him. And again, this week against North is pretty darn good too because of the Teakle match. After this, they've got Richmond. He got a 117 on them earlier this year. Then they've got Essendon over the last 5 weeks. They're the 3rd easiest ruck matchup. And then they've got the Giants, who in the last 5 are the 6th easiest ruck matchup. So this is, outside of Gawn and Grundy, this is the value ruck I actually want to get on that's got a great fixture. There's no dynamite matches like Gawn has against the Eagles. But my goodness me, if salary cap is a little bit tight, you're looking for ceiling and you're just looking for some green dots over the next 4 weeks in terms of matchups, and you want something unique, I actually really like Rowan Marshall as a play. Let's stay with his teammate, get the 3rd Saint in my top 10. What is this? But again, we're talking value just over $500,000 for Jack Sinclair. He's my number 8 trade target. In the last 3 weeks, he's going an average of 119, and he's the number 4 ranked defender in SuperCoach. Only Josh Daicos, who's coming off the back of that monster Gold Coast game, so really that's an aberration, but it's there. It's Nick Vlaston, and it's his teammate in Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera. Outside of that, nobody is averaging more in the last 3 weeks. And we've talked about this run for St Kilda, but it's awesome for Jack Sinclair for a couple of reasons, not just from a fixture perspective, but can you imagine if a team did have the capacity to give any attention to any St Kilda player, if you needed any further reminder, last weekend and the last quarter was an absolute definitive statement. If you're going to try to stop anyone at St Kilda, it's going to be Naz, not Jack. We could see him get off the chain because this fixture is awesome. North Melbourne this week, the last 2 times he's played them, he's gone 130 plus. Then he's got the Tigers. The last time he played them earlier this year, he went a 160 plus score. And the 2 games prior to that in 2024 was a 123 and a 124 fixture, right? Then he's coming up against the Bombers. They're the 2nd best team from an average perspective for players that take kick-ins. Hello, Jack. And then the Giants to wrap up the year again. If anyone's getting attention for the Saints, it's Naz. Who's the ball movement going through if it's not Naz? Jack. And the best matchup for players that are playing that kind of halfback wing transition playmaking role in the last 5 weeks, want to have a guess who it is? The Giants. The best matchup. Who he's got. It's all lining up. Price point is value compared to what he can do. And the next 4 weeks all look fantastic. It wouldn't shock me if this average of 119 that he's going at over the last 3 maintains over the upcoming 4 weeks. And then let's try to give you something unique a little bit. I really like this pick, my number 9 trade target. If you're looking for some separation, maybe you're a little frustrated at a Caleb Daniel and what he's been able to do for you over the last couple of weeks. You're like, nah, I need a good run of games and I need something unique. I got you. Gryan Miers is my number 9 trade target. In the top % of coaches in SuperCoach, he's in just 5%. So scary unique. And all the attention's going to go to Jeremy Cameron. And the fixture's good for him. I actually like it more for Gryan in the SuperCoach. But all the attention and conversation in the SuperCoach community is going to be all about Jezza. And so maybe in that top percentage, that ownership just creeps a little bit higher. And Gryan goes under the radar. His next 4 games, actually really good. He's got Port this coming week, who are just a shell of themselves at the moment. All of their stars, with the exception of Zach Butters, are either injured, about to be ruled out injured, or could be out injured. Like, it's Butters and bust in this team at the moment. They're just on their knees as a football club, unfortunately, for pair fans. And he played them earlier this year at Adelaide Oval and got a 114. That's good news. Then he's got Essendon. He played them in round 14 and got 100 against them. He's then got the Swans. For general forwards in the last 5 rounds, they're the number 2 best matchup to get. It's awesome. Yeah, it could be a Braden Campbell tag that comes his way, of course. But we were worried about that last week, that might happen. But Campbell's more plays forward on the forward line on a defender rather than does that. So that might happen. I just don't see it. That feels wild. Jordan, would you really go him over Holmes or Smith? I just feel like if Sydney are trying to create any tagging narrative, Gryan is nowhere near it. And then he's got the Tigers, who he played in round 17. That's his final game of the year. And they dished up a 135 when he played them just a couple of weeks ago. And with the Crows on a tear, with Brisbane trying to restore back some level of dignity after a disappointing performance, and they haven't had too many this year. The Pies having a couple of tough matchups. This top 4 spot of those 3 teams, let alone for Geelong, nothing is locked in, let alone who's in the 4, but the ordering of it. There's a world Geelong not only get top 4, but make a home final as an outcome, depending on how some of those games go, let alone what happens with the Hawthorn or anything like that. So I can see Geelong absolutely pressing to the finish line. And Gryan's been outstanding. In his last, since round 10, there's just 1 game of a score under 90. So unique, check. Good fixture, check. High scoring basement, so it's not going to burn you. Hello, Caleb Daniel. Check. And a matchup over the next couple of weeks, specifically that final round of the year, that could really bring it all home for you. I love this pick. Unique ceiling, high-scoring floor and fixture. Tick, 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 tick. This just, to me, feels like an absolute ripping selection for you. And then my final trade target for the year. Well, for the round, not for the year. But let's be honest, it could be your final trade for the year, depending on what you do. Sam Darcy. He's moved up a little bit in price point last week, coming off that 150. And yeah, it's impacting his last 3 games, but he's the number 7 ranked player for forwards over the last 3 weeks. He's been exceptional. Now, this coming round does look challenging. So you're picking him here probably for 2 reasons. One, you're looking at the round 22 and 23 matchup, which we'll talk about in a second, these are what I'm targeting, but it's probably more a financially driven decision of I've got 1 trade and not much cash, and who's the best I can get. Because the fixture for like inside mids or something like that for the is a little bit more favourable. Halfbacks like a Bailey Dale, a little bit more favourable. It's not as great for key position forward because this week it's coming up against the Giants, who are the number 1 most difficult team to score against in the last 3. Or I think it's 3rd for the last 10, number 1 hardest in the last 5. So not a great matchup. Silver lining in the last 5 rounds, really good matchup for rucks. Darcy does spend about 1/3 of his time in the ruck. So while it might be a little more challenging and can't really pop that big monster 130 plus score, he might just slide into the ruck for a little percentage more to impact the game if they can't get that matchup right. So not all is lost, but again, you're picking him this week because it's the best you can get financially, and you see a couple of good matchups to come. Then it's the Ds. Over the last 5 weeks, this is the number 2 best matchup for key position forwards. The Lever May, Turner, Petty, McDonald, whoever's back there, Scary. It's just not there anymore. It's just not there. This could be an absolute bloodbath if things go the way the Dogs hope and need them to. Then it's the Eagles. My gosh, they've been gifting easy goals their format and their structure and their ball movements a little more identifiable. But as they get towards these final couple of weeks of the year, all it takes is the team to be half off and the Dogs, who are doing everything they can to crack for finals. Because if they sneak over the line against the Giants and the Ds, like all of a sudden, the percentage of that Eagles game could absolutely be critical, and he'd be a key piece of how they got there. And then to wrap up the final game of the year, it's the Dockers. It's a pretty neutral play for key position forward and ruck matchups. I actually like Darcy. Dollars is the limiting factor, and you do need to upgrade a forward. Maybe you just can't get to those 500 or even higher 500 guys, or even the higher 400k guys. If you're like, man, who's a guy that's under 500k that could pop me a couple of 120s and sits in my flex or my F6 spot and might just give me a bit of protection against the 80 or 90 that I'd love to see fall off. This is the guy that could pop a bit of a ceiling for you. I know you've missed the 150 game last week that you would have loved to have got. That was the optimum spot because you got 3 of the 5 matchups were really looking good for him. This is challenging, and it's at the start of the round. So I understand this is not for everybody, but if dollars are a limiting factor, this might just be as good as you can get. And I think it's a pretty solid selection. But what are the trades you're making this week in SuperCoach? Why don't you comment below and let me know the moves you are making. If I've nailed any of the players you're trading into this week, you have to like the video. It's in the terms and conditions of YouTube. I didn't make the rules. They did. I'm sorry, friend. You got to like the video. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, make sure you do so. There is videos dropping every day in the 2025 AFL season that there is no AFL. We've got, as you are watching right now, the SuperCoach trade targets dropping every Wednesday night. Tuesday, we've got the strategy session, a great episode. You want to go and check that out. It's also on the channel. And then if you do play AFL Fantasy on a Monday afternoon, we drop our trade targets for that format. Still plenty of great videos to come from us over the next month of the year. We hope you've enjoyed what you've got from us so far this year, but we can't wait to be back chatting more SuperCoach and AFL fantasy footy with you very, very soon.